I might just start it from there, to be honest. That works. We've got an intro. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our 60th anniversary rewatch. We're getting very close now.
Yes.
There are mere weeks away now before we get new Doctor Who for the first time in what feels like a small age.
Yeah, it's the longest drought we've had, and we felt it. To be honest, I don't know how many times I've actually rewatched all of New Who in this year. It's been a lot,
but luckily we do have Scream of the Shalka to keep us busy.
Yes.
If you've been watching us for a while, you'd have known that we have been doing a anniversary rewatch, going through all of the Doctor Who's celebratory anniversary episodes. We've done the three Doctors, the 5 Doctors. We did Dimensions in Time a while ago, and then now let's move us on to the 40th anniversary. The first one we've done on this little rewatch, not including Dimensions in Time, where Doctor Who wasn't actually on the telly.
Yeah, so this is the wilderness era.
Yeah, it was broadcast between the 13th and 18th of December 2003, written by Paul Cornell, directed by Wilson Millam, and it broadcast online in the early noughties, which I'm sure went as well as possibly could have done with dial-up internet and everything. There's an interesting little special feature on the DVD where people are explaining how, you're watching it on the size of like a postage stamp on the screen and it was taking ages to buffer. And I don't think it would have been anything like watching it on the DVD there. And I think this is maybe the second time I've seen this all the way through.
It's the first time I have.
What did you think?
I enjoyed it. It's considering at the time there was no real Doctor Who at all. It was nice to just throw back into that. You get that little bit of casual playing off. It's okay. I'm great. I don't need to worry about these people that you do tend to get with New Who.
Yeah.
While harking back to that awesome run from previous Doctors in the classic series.
Yeah, I think as an experiment and as like a sort of attempted, because if this has gone well, I'm sure there would have been other animations, maybe not very often. There might have maybe been 1 or 2 a year, but they're good fun, and they're only 15 minutes because it bombs along the pace. 6 episodes, but it's only an hour and a quarter long. Or an hour and 20 or something.
To be honest, it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think Richard E. Grant makes a really good Doctor, and he feels like the kind of Doctor, this 9th Doctor, feels like exactly the kind of 9th Doctor that would have happened, had the series have continued after Paul McGann. Because I think there's a lot of stuff in there as well that the new series borrows from, because you've got this slightly darker Doctor, you've got this, unseen events in the past that are sort of hinted at, and he's clearly lost a lot of people, all of his species, for example. There's a lot of that I think is hinted to tie into the books and stuff with the war in heaven and everything, and that they eventually lose that and the Time Lords are wiped out and everything, and it's just the Doctor left on his own. And I think there's even a thing about him being in love with the President's daughter and everything and all of that, and that's this woman who we hear on the answer phone. But to set the scene, I think that first episode is really, really well done in terms of atmosphere for what is essentially flash animation. It's not, when we say this is an animation, this isn't like an animation you'd get now.
No, God, no.
It's not like something you get. It's not even,
This is very early, animation.
Yeah.
Sort of trial and error stuff.
Yeah, it's flash animation. It's nothing too crazy. It's basically the way of thinking of this is that it's a very basic animation of like a Big Finish story. Not that it's Big Finish audio, it was all recorded to make an animation, but it works in a way because there's a lot of tension through that first episode as the Doctor's trying to work out what's going on. And yes, it's only 15 minutes, but it really builds up quite well. As you've got that first scene with the meteorite that lands, which does feel a bit like it should have been a pre-credit sequence. I can't talk. And it's also the origin of that joke of locking the TARDIS like a car key.
Yeah,
that we get in the end of time. That actually happens in this for the first time, which I always forget. But yeah, I think for even in terms of some of the exposition later on, when it's sort of the proto companion for this, Alison has explained to the Doctor what's been going on. You kind of think, well, that's the kind of thing that they would, if a normal budget was happening, you'd have seen that at another point in the story of this person, being covered in lava and everything, and the Shalka emerging and everything. I think it really works as a bit of exposition because it still feels quite creepy.
Yeah, you've got people afraid to do everyday things, which nowadays we take for granted heavily, just sitting there and having the TV on a volume that you can hear it, because the Shalka are drawn by noise, and if your TV's too loud, you're going to draw these creatures out and die, basically.
Yeah, it's a cool, quite creepy concept, and I think it would have been interesting to see more of that played on a bit more for Hobbit, because it's played on, the Doctor smashes like cups and stuff against the walls, and then they appear, and that's the end of episode 1, where I think it'd be quite cool to ramp up the tension, because we do see a bit of it in the pub that Alison works at as well, that it's completely empty, and not many people are talking, everyone's just sort of sat there really, not really taking in a standard pub atmosphere. But the Shalka are a really cool idea for an alien. This race of creatures that are using meteorites to embed themselves in Earth, that they can use portals to cross from one thing to another, and then make it look like the inhabitants of the planet that they're taking over and living underground. On the surface, it looks like it's been wiped out, and it looks like they've done it to themselves through, global extinction events and stuff like that. It's a very cool, you can tell it's one of those plans that's thought out quite well, because quite often it's like, we're going to invade and take over and plunder your natural resources and then leave you all, and it's like, okay, that's fine. But this has got a bit more up here going on from the Shalka.
Yeah, no, it really is. I'd love to have seen more of this type of story in Doctor Who. Purely just because it is a lot more fun than just the standard, you're invading, okay, great, Doctor's going to stop you. Oh no, you want our water. You can't have it, bye.
And it's a very different approach that this Doctor has to trying to deal with this threat, because, he almost leaves the whole story almost feels done by the start of the second episode, because the Doctor just blows up Alison and Joe's house.
Yeah.
And just goes, right, well, there we are. See you
sorry
later.
About that. See you later.
Your house and everything, but he does feel like he's being held to account, because the military characters in this do sort of pull him up, because it's not unit, it's just the bog standard military. And there's a great comedy, bit of comedic relief in one of the sergeants in their Greaves, who has got no time for any of this and is just sort of the butt of all the jokes and everything. But even him and his superior do hold the Doctor to account. And, there's that line about how that they'll tidy up all the mess while the Doctor does something eccentric and superior and all that. And it's played for a laugh, but you can tell that there's a little bit of sort
resentment.
Yeah. Derek Jacobi is the Master.
I know. I love it. I honestly loved it. It's so nice to see that.
This is the kind of thing that makes me wish that, and I know I've said this a million times, that we had more Jacobi Master on telly. Now, this isn't the same Jacobi Master that we have in the series. It just happens to be that he was cast in the same role at 2 different periods by 2 different directors and everything, but he's great in this. There's a scene later on as well where he's almost about to hypnotise Alison, despite the fact that he's a robot, and the Doctor bursts in, he's sort of like, I'm the Master, and you will come to know me if you spend some more time. It's funny, but it's still he's got that menacing charm that we know from all the Masters, really.
Yeah.
But I just think this is a right cracker of a story as well. Like I said, this Doctor is more alien. It's more a Capaldi, Tom Baker sort of hybrid of that weirdness mixed with the sort of bit rude at times, bit snappy.
Don't get involved, sort of just let them sort it out for the house, for themselves.
But you can tell that it's more of an act than what he actually believes, right?
He's
Capaldi, where it's it's very much a front to hide a lot of insecurities and things.
Yeah.
The TARDIS I was a bit unimpressed by.
Yeah, but then it is an animation. It's one of those things you tend to be more impressed with it in real life.
Yeah, I just think it's because I think it's lit quite well, and it's lit to hide the fact that they obviously haven't got the budget to do a massive interior of a spaceship and everything. I just think it's just a shame that we still only see the same 4 or 5. I think there's the amount of times you see Richard E. Grant walk, but we see the Doctor walking through the TARDIS doors, and it's the same shot of the doors opening. That pops up a lot, just slightly with the background changed and everything.
Yeah, it's like the Zeppelin Bay as well.
Yeah, it's very much hinted at and sort of, and I like these things about the Master being the robot and everything, and then the TARDIS voicemail being the Doctor and this mysterious woman and everything. There's definitely stuff in there that you could tell that they were going to expand on had it gone to that a bit further on down the line. The scene of the Doctor as well falling into a black hole is the kind of thing you could do on an animated bit of Doctor Who, because if you were to do that on TV and he's falling into a black hole and he's on the phone and everything, it would feel a bit like
this is a bit cheap.
It's a bit cheesy. It's a bit stupid. But with animation, it kind of works in a weird way. I know I just banged the microphone again, but we're gonna go. Forget it. It's fine. But it does, in a weird way, kind of work.
Yeah.
I can't really put my finger on why, but it's the kind of thing. But with animation, it does allow you to do these more daft things that you wouldn't get away in live action, because you couldn't pull it off well. With the phone call and everything, and being like, I'm about to die. Blah, blah, blah. It's
Yeah,
But
it's like, oh no, low battery.
yeah, it's this sort of thing.
Stupid stuff like that.
Almost quite reminiscent of Moffat era stuff, where the Capaldi
Yeah.
is jumping out of a plane, like, flying to the TARDIS, like skydiving towards the TARDIS and stuff. Like that would probably work quite well in an animation, but it doesn't really translate well into the live action medium and everything.
No, I agree.
One thing as well I want to point out is how good the cliffhangers are in this, because all right, there are, there's some of them are quite, oh my god, we're all going to die sort of thing, but that one of the Shalka thing popping out of Alison's head is like, oh, okay, that's different.
Yeah, no, that was nice.
Well, not nice.
Not
for
nice
her.
for her. No. No, that was cool. It was like one of those things that kept you hooked because you're like, oh my god, what's that in his head? What's it gonna do? Is it gonna like make her go boom and become a Shalka, or like a cocoon?
Yeah,
that's the one I was going for.
The thing with cliffhangers in Doctor Who, and we talked about this before, is that sometimes you can tell when a writer doesn't really like doing cliffhangers and rather write something a bit more long form, because the episode will be going, well, all of a sudden it'll be like, stop or I'm going to shoot you, and then credits, and then it's like, okay, I won't shoot you. And with this, they're a bit more, some of them are a bit more daft, like the Doctor falling into a black hole and things, but that one of Alison, and the first one of the tension building before these creatures arrive, I thought it was great. I thought it was great. Yeah.
And it's the mind control, the control of everyone as well, like dragging them all to one place and herding around to specific points around the Earth.
Yeah, to disrupt the environment.
Yeah,
and everything.
Like it really is a genius plan.
Yeah, and there's a small cameo in there from an actor, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him, some guy called David Tennant.
Yeah, I don't know who he is. If you could let us know in the comments, that would be great.
Yeah, I think he was in what was it called?
Good Omens?
Yeah, no, I was thinking, Nativity 2.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, that was it.
And I quite like when the Doctor is not really afraid to be a bit different from predecessors, and because there has been a bit of a gap in this as well, you can sort of... It's the same way that they do with Eccleston. Eccleston is not like your classic Doctors.
No.
And that's a good thing. I'm not criticising that at all, and it's the same thing here.
It's the whole point of a reboot, isn't it? You want it to be a change. You want something to bring in the old fans and intrigue new fans to make them come and watch the show. You don't want to be running the same sort of format as you did in a previous run.
Yeah, I also love the bit where, and this is quite similar to that, is the fact that when Alison's boyfriend Joe starts getting taken over, and he's just like, don't worry, it's fine, and just decks him.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you never get that with the TV Doctor. And I couldn't help but love that.
It's just so out of left field.
Yeah. I just think that it's a really cracking story, and for the fact that, all right, it's 6 episodes, but it does only run at about hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
It's great, and I want there to be more Doctor Who stories where the monsters are defeated because the Doctor's singing at them.
Yes, no, this was a brilliant twist, and I loved it. I would kill to see David Tennant sing to the Toymaker to make him run away. That would be interesting.
One of the less weird things we've heard rumoured about the 60th anniversary.
Yeah. Why are we ever wrong about these things?
Well, I mean, we usually get them spot on, to be fair. So, it doesn't really matter. Overall, though, I really enjoyed this. As an experiment for what it is, I don't think necessarily, as a 40th anniversary, it doesn't quite work, because it's very difficult to do an anniversary of a show that isn't on. But as a treat for the fans going, it's your 40th anniversary, here's some new Doctor Who, right? And it could lead to something. I mean, I think they finished working on this like a week before it was announced that it was coming back with Christopher Eccleston and Russell T Davies and everything. So there is a sort of a lack of longevity to this, and I think because they focused so much on this at the time, is that Richard E. Grant is the Ninth Doctor, and then is quickly overshadowed by Christopher Eccleston. He is the Ninth Doctor. It does get forgotten about Scream of the Shalka, and I think it's a shame, because I think this is something that is really good fun. Because some of the other animated stuff we've had from Doctor Who isn't great. Like the 2 David Tennant ones, they're fine.
Yeah.
But the animation on them holds up sort of worse. Isn't as good as it. I feel like this holds up more because it's trying to do less. It's admitting, it's going, right, we're not trying to be dead flashy. We're just a simple animation to provide more of a visual companion to the story itself.
We just want to give you more Who. That's all we're here for. We want it to look half decent, but we're not all that fussed at the same time. And
I think it does look great.
It really is amazing.
I'd love to see them, not that I think it'll ever happen, but why not have some more sort of alternate universe Shalka Doctor stuff, and have Richard E. Grant come back and do some more. Yeah, I think I'm really surprised by this because I thought this was going to be the one that we go into. You know, we're doing the 3 other quite big stories in the history of Doctor Who, and to do this, and I think the 40th anniversary as a whole is quite an interesting place in Doctor Who history because that's the anniversary that's all held up by the fans. You know, all right, yeah, you could stress that 93 was the same, but at that point it was still, even then, even though it was 4 or 5 years later, it's still like, well, it might be coming back soon, and it did, you know, just slightly differently. Whereas this felt like, oh, we're just in the murky waters, and then you get the announcement that it's coming back. And,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think for what it is,
And where it comes from as well.
yeah, and to look at it compared with all the other stuff, like I think there's a book that celebrated the 40th anniversary, Big Finish had Zagreus, which is very Marmitey with people, and I re-listened to that the other day, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, to be honest. It's mental, it's so daft. You've got all of these actors from Doctor Who history, but they're all playing different roles for the majority of it, apart from a handful of them, and it doesn't quite work as a, you know, big multi-Doctor meetup, but I think as a celebration of the show and a celebration, like I was listening to an interview on the Sirens of Time, shout out to those guys because that's a cracking podcast, where Gary Russell explained his reasons for doing that and talking about how it's more of a celebration of the talent rather than the show itself. And this is like the opposite, being like, this is a celebration of the show. And I think as a whole, the 40th anniversary works as well. This is a key part of it. I think if it had just been this, it would have been a bit more meh. And it's a shame that this is so forgotten because I think it does hold up really well for what it is. As an hour and a bit of flash animated Doctor Who, it's a cracking little story.
Yeah,
there's some great performances. Richard E. Grant is brilliant. Sophie Okonedo is great as Alison.
The comic relief works.
Yeah, it's not slap you in the face comic relief like you get in some in New Who, where it's just like, oh, roll your eyes kind of humour. It does.
No, we're looking at you.
Well, Moffat, I'm looking at you more like. But this, I think, I enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this, and for it to come out of the wilderness as well.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see that the show was still so alive, even when it wasn't on TV, and like that. This show's gonna go on, even if it's not on TV. Everyone's gonna remember Doctor Who. Everyone's gonna know Doctor Who. It's one of those brilliant pieces of British TV.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I think this is quite an understated but still very decent anniversary. But next week we're going to be going from understated to probably the biggest celebration the show's had ever, I think. I know we can't really compare it to this year yet, but 50 is always a bigger one than 60 anyway, because it's just a bigger number. And there was a lot around the 50th to talk about as well. So next week I think is going to be quite a big one.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. We're also going to be talking about a few other things that have been announced as well, like the Daleks animation, colorization that was announced while we recorded last week.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a chance to talk about it because it was announced just as we were putting everything away. But it is what it is. It's fine. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, come back next week and watch us talk about Day of the Doctor.
Yes, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, it really does help us, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I know I say that every week, but we do.
We're grateful people.
We're grateful.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I've wheeled back into shot.
Okay.